Hello and happy Friday, my loyal listeners across the interwebs. Welcome to another episode of IT Radio, a radio show dedicated to you, the defender, against the evil hackers across the interwebs, where I arm you with information on the latest tactics, techniques, and procedures, vendor solutions, and discourse on the latest topics around cybersecurity with your colleagues and fellow brethren and sisterin around the world on the topics that matter most to you. The juicy knowledge-filled stuff you can't find on the conference exhibit floor. Come one, come all to Alyssa Knight's House of Packets. If we haven't met yet, I'm Alyssa Knight, your host of IT Radio and senior analyst with the IT Group, a market research firm dedicated to bringing you the knowledge through research you need to be more effective in your jobs as defenders in cybersecurity. On today's show, I'm live on site at the Extrahop offices in downtown Seattle, Washington, the Evergreen State, where I interview Barbara Kay, Senior Director of Security Products at Extrahop, a network threat analysis solution powered by machine learning. Today, we're going to discuss the gender gap in cybersecurity, women in leadership, machine learning, and how Extrahop is fighting the good fight against the evil black hats. Barbara, thank you for having me here today in the excellent catered lunch from Specialties Bakery.
Oh, it is such a pleasure to have a chance to talk with you and your community.
Cool. Okay, so let's start off with the easy question. Who is Barbara Kay and why is she at Extrahop?
Oh, that's a great question. My story is about 15 years ago, I got into the security space. I was working with a company some folks may remember called Sun Microsystems.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
My father was the director of marketing for Sun. He reported up to Chet.
Oh.
So, yes, that before Oracle. Yeah.
Yes.
Solaris was a thing.
Yeah, well, Solaris was one of my things. I did all of the security and privacy marketing for the various Sun business units, which was kind of fun because it meant that you had to pull together a lot of different pieces, right. Operating systems and chips and hardware and services and try to make sense of a lot of different moving parts, right?
It was a massive company.
It was a massive company.
They were doing everything.
Yeah.
I remember they got a lot of flack for the fact that you had to pay for Solaris. And then they charged you for the compiler. It was the craziest thing. Anyway.
Well, the definition of where the value comes from over time changes a lot. And, when Mr. Linus Torvalds got out there and made Linux free, that changed a lot of rules. Right. And now we see the same kind of transition, transformational event with cloud, looking at, old school, how do you do stuff on-prem, new school, how do you do stuff in the cloud? Can you have a foot in each camp? Yeah, you have to. What does that look like, right? How do you rise above that complexity? And, Sun was affected by some of those the transformational realities that were externally imposed. And it's kind of funny, actually. I think about it now, the slogan for Sun was actually, the network is the computer.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. And I feel like we're living that again now with, especially with Extrahop, what we're doing is pulling in so much information off the network and using that to understand and investigate for, abnormal behavior, attacks, performance anomalies, application dependencies. There's just so much that you can find out from the network about the computer, right? And so it's just kind of fun. I think McNeely had quite the vision. But to wrap it up, about 15 years ago, I moved into the security space, and I have stayed there ever since, just because I think it's so interesting, right?
What's interesting about it?
Well, I am a real sponge when it comes to technology and to trends and events. I was a history major, and what I like is looking at data and finding the pattern and finding what makes sense and seeing it make sense and change over time. So for me, security is awesome because there's always something new. There's always something you don't know. You can't assume you know everything because odds are good that you can't ever. And so it's a very kind of egalitarian place. And so if people
That's a good word. I like egalitarian.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, people can come in from anywhere and make something good happen for themselves. They can be a part of something good for their company. Yeah. What the cybersecurity space needs is energy and talent and curiosity, right?
And it's funny because if you think about it, compare it to law, compare it to medicine, any other industry, it's the one industry where you could be a high school dropout and go real far.
Right.
Or you don't need a degree. I mean, if back in the Sundays, there was no, master's degree in cybersecurity.
Right.
That didn't exist.
No. No.
So, I mean, now you have these kids coming out of high school where a lot of the high schools are teaching Cisco. You hear CCNA as a senior in a lot of high schools.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, think about Vote Tech used to be about could you maintain a car engine, right? Could you cut hair, right? Very vocational, right? And now, the tech you're learning in high school is so much more, intellectual and conceptual. And I think it really, it pushes different parts of your brain and creates a whole lot different set of opportunities. So I just think cybersecurity is great. It's such a place that can draw in new talent. There's such a hunger and an opportunity that it's rewarding for people who are willing to try.
Why the lack of women, right? So, if cybersecurity has very low barriers to entry as a career, meaning that you could be at any income level and you can have the same exact access to information as, if you're poor versus someone that's living below the poverty line has the same level of access to the same information that somebody that's making 6-7 figures a year, right? There's very low barriers. It's a very equal playing field. Why is there such a small number of women in cybersecurity? Do you think it's a lack of interest? Do you think it's, what is it?
Yeah, I think that is fascinating. One thing that's a little anomalous is that in the privacy space, there are a ton of women in the privacy domain, right? Coming at it, some of them from lawyers, some of them from different parts of the universe. But that's one segment that is highly female dominated, which is fascinating to me. And I think it was because it was sort of grew up while no one else was paying attention, right? It became important but wasn't seen as much of a technical as much as a policy and procedural domain. In terms of what's holding women back, I guess if I think about it, my son's in college and, looking at how do I take on a new topic? How do I prep myself and dig into a new area? You can teach yourself online, right? Using all the wonderful Khan Academy. There are a lot of online training resources now, Coursera.
Yeah.
And it may be that people need to pick off a place to start and feel that they can make something happen. It doesn't take more than a few months to get to some degree of comfort. And with that framework, you then can keep populating more bricks of knowledge. And for me, that's always been my approach. I try to start with something I know and build onto it in adjacent areas. And then you can move from a position of confidence and authority and to the degree that women have generally been told they can't, they shouldn't, they mustn't, moving from a position of strength is critical, right? Because then you can stay strong and move forward and not be undermined by all of the societal and systemic things that hold us back.
Do you think it could also be a lack of role models? There's this uber leader. The only thing that comes to mind is girl with the dragon tattoo, right? That's the only thing I can think of right now. I mean, is is it that I don't know. It's like lack of elite hacker that is actually a girl versus a guy. I mean.
Well, I think you have to decide. As a female, what choice do you make? Right? Is cybersecurity as interesting as other topics? Right? I would advocate that it's more interesting than some of the things that I find boring as dirt, like electrical engineering. But, as women today, you have a lot of options, right?
Right.
And people get to make choices based on what they find is important, right? Is it that you're going to go after an environmental impact career, right? Is it that you're going to try to go change the world through logic and political science, right? So as a female, you have many more doors open than you ever used to, right? If you're picking a technical and a more of a STEM track, then you sit there and go, well, what's interesting? And, but you don't have to go there. It used to be that women were limited. Now you have more choices. What we have to do is make it exciting to be in cybersecurity, right?
Make it
cool.
Maybe instead of Mr. Robot, Mrs. Robot.
Yeah. Well,
Robot.
Ms. Robot, or even just, just make it more interesting and more appealing to solve problems in that space.
Right.
I think everybody's probably taken like a Myers-Briggs kind of personality test. And some people are about solving problems. Some people are about vision. Are you practical? Are you judging? Are you thinking, right? All that stuff. I find that fascinating. And the profile of people who do cybersecurity isn't, a monolith. And if people can understand themselves, maybe we can help them find the fit with the cyberspace.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw that commercial. I was shocked. It was like maybe last week I saw that commercial for CyberCard. Did you see? I think it's Navy. There was a teenage girl in her bedroom, and I was like, oh, this is going to be like a computer game, ad. It was a Navy ad, and she was telling her mom how she wanted to defend this country against hackers. Uh-huh. And there was like this computer in the back. I was like, oh, that's cool. Like,
yeah.
And it really goes to say, like, I think therein lies the problem, is that my immediate reaction was, oh, this is about a computer game.
Right, right. Well,
it's a computer game ad, but it was an ad for the military looking for, the next cyber warrior to defend our country against hackers.
Well, 2 points I would make. One is, whether that was a male or a female, you probably would have thought it was a video game, right? So that may not be, it doesn't have to go there. But on the plane this morning, I was reading an article in the New York Times about how they've decided that NotPetya is a cyber war event, and therefore the insurance companies don't have to cover it with cyber insurance.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, so great article, really detailed. And but the definition of cyber warrior is so exciting and compelling. And I think of it, at least for me, I like patterns, I like trends, I like detective novels and murder mysteries and finding the pattern in the puzzle, right? Assembling the puzzle and making something make sense. So if that's the kind of thing that you like, cybersecurity is endless opportunity, right? Today's way of thinking about that is the attack chain, right? I've got one of these, one of those, and three of these over here, and together I've got a data exfil, right? So for me, that is fun. And satisfying that is better than, Scrabble and crossword puzzles and those kinds of things. And so we have to find a way to make it that accessible and exciting for everyone. I mean, we have a skill shortage for cyber, but certainly for females. And I think that may be one where if we look at the way women think, there may be some ways for us to attach the opportunity to the preferences and priorities of women.
Definitely. Yeah. And it is neat to see, to be in a conference room at Extrahop's headquarters and be surrounded by women. I mean, clearly, there isn't this, I'm assuming Extrahop is wanting to hire just as many women as men. And, so let's talk about Extrahop. What is, who is Extrahop? What do you guys do? What's it like for you being as a woman in leadership at Extrahop?
So Extrahop does network traffic analysis, and it's kind of exciting because the technology's been around. It was invented more than 10 years ago, but it's been gradually optimized and honed to really deliver at enterprise level of demand, right? In terms of scale, at 100 megs, in terms of real-time decryption, including TLS 1.3. I mean, really grappling with the big problem and not being a science experiment, or we built this with, 6 VCs and a dog in the garage and it might work, but it looks cool, right? So the underlying engine is really high performance. And, I joined about a year ago, almost a year and a half now, coming in from a pure security space and not being super network, savvy. I mean, as a CISSP, that was always something I had to know. But, again, I learn what I have to know for the job at hand. So I'm definitely more around SIM and SOAR and SOC than network kinds of things, because that was what I was doing most recently. So from an analysis perspective, what Extrahop is doing is pulling rich insights off the wire, doing analysis in real time, and helping guide people to understand what to investigate and to investigate it more effectively. So if we think about this problem in this space, we're really tackling some difficult challenges that the industry is facing. So one is moving to much more of a real-time model. And I know there's a lot of, pedantic debate about, is it real time? Is it near real time? Whatever. But the point is, it's not after days, right? We're not looking in hours. We're not looking at yesterday's news. We're looking at as close to now as we can. And we're doing that. We as an industry need to be doing that from the moment of detection through to the close of a disposition.
Yeah,
right?
and it's funny because, there seems to be this emphasis systemically within the industry on wire speed performance at real time. And at the end of the day, even if you're doing wire speed at 10 gig, no human is going to be able to look at that and analyze packets at wire speed in real time.
Right.
I think the whole thing is silly. Because, if you think about it, we have all these tools that are providing real-time alerting in SIM solutions or SOAR, whatever it may be. And a lot of the times there's no human sitting behind the analyst unless it's a SOC or an MSSP. A lot of times organizations aren't finding out until way after the fact that they've had an adversary on the network. I think, and historically there was this sort of arms race with vendors of who can reach 10 gig wire speed first. Mm-hmm. and there's definitely, I think, two ways in which data is ingested off the network. There's network telemetry. Mm-hmm. Right, where you're getting telemetry data or some from network devices. There's your own capture device. Where does Extrahop fit? Do you guys have your own capture device where you guys are
mm-hmm.
TCP dump on steroids, where you're pulling that data yourself and sending it to some sort of brain?
Well, we use a tap or a span or a port mirror, something to take a copy of network traffic. From a security perspective, that's a good thing because then no one knows it's there. Right. So the attacker can't work around it. They can't turn it off. They can't spoof it. So it doesn't have some of the disadvantages of agent and log-based technology. So definitely a big fan of passive. From a performance and throughput perspective, the advantage of passive is that it's not going to slow anything down.
You're not dropping packets. You're not. Right. You're not in line.
Right.
You. Okay. So. Is it full packet capture, or are you guys just grabbing whatever matches, or are you guys pattern matching? Are you machine learning? What's the difference? How do you guys do detection?
So we take a copy of the network traffic, and then we're doing full stream processing. We decode all the more than 50 different protocols. We are looking for information in all of that wired data. And so that information, we can glean the users, the devices, the applications. So because of the protocols they're using, because of the types of things they're doing, the things that they're talking to, and the information we can extract from the data itself, we can infer a whole lot of information about what's actually going on the wire. And the thing about speed is that you want to be able to keep up. And people are so reliant and dependent on network. You think about, there's definitely a lot of traffic northwest, but there's also a ton of traffic east-west, yeah. Right? And so when people start to size what they really need in order to keep up with the data that's going through, because once you fall behind, you never catch up, right?
Right.
there is the capacity requirement is really important just because you don't know what you may not need, right? If you're going with a packet model where it's like, I'm going to store everything just in case, right? Eventually your larder will get full, right?
Yeah.
My wine cellar overfloweth. I cannot make any more trips.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is look for the information that's in the packet, but abstract it out as metadata that is much more easily analyzed. It's easier to explore, and it's much more lightweight to store. Right?
Okay, so it's not the full, here's every header of the packet, here's the payload. It's just the metadata that you guys care about.
Well, we do continuous packet capture. Okay. You can store it if you want. Okay. The thing about it is that most packet capture approaches are designed to store it all and then hunt in it, right? And we are pulling out the information and then storing it optionally. So we have customers who never store. You don't have to store the packets if you don't want to, but you're able to collect the data out of it that's meaningful, right? Mm-hmm. And we store it, or we assess it, we're looking actually as an entire session. So we give you a transaction, a sense of what actually happened, not just that two people were talking, but what were they saying? What was the context? Were they angry? You're getting a lot more meaning out of a conversation when you're looking at all the way from layer 2 up to layer 7. You're looking at the content of the conversation, the payload. So you can see attacks that are much more hard to see, like SQL injection and cross-site scripting. If someone is stealing data, you can see the data that they're stealing, right? So you have a much more comprehensive understanding of the nature of the activity. And we were talking before about encryption. That's something that we think is important, right, in terms of protecting people's privacy, protecting the integrity of the information. But if you don't have a model for decrypting, then you can't see when something bad is happening, right?
Right.
And nowadays, a lot of attacks are happening. They're operating within legitimate channels, right? They may be using approved applications, approved credentials, approved users. So you really have to be looking at what's normal, what's different, how is something behaving over time, and what kinds of energy in terms of machine learning kinds of compute engines can I throw at this to find meaning?
So a lot of vendors are throwing that term around right now. It seems to be very popular, the concept of creating a pattern of life on a user or a system network. So you guys are recording patterns of life for individual users. You guys have user context awareness. You know that if this user rarely logs into this machine, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So
detection.
What happens is that if you talk over the network, we're aware of it, right? Whatever you're doing over the network. And we're able to extract a lot of information about the user and the devices and the types of activities. Now, because we don't have an agent, we don't see within the box. So which processes are operating within the endpoint, that's not what we do. But you can, use our open interfaces to integrate with
EDR
vendors,
or something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity there. And in some ways, people are using tools like SOAR to connect those dots, one to many, rather than integrating with each and every endpoint thing and each and every network thing. I'm going to integrate with one thing that talks to all of those. So that's for the more mature entities who have more complex universes. I think SOAR can be a real advantage. But you were asking about machine learning. I think machine learning and the pattern of life, the idea is that every day is different, right? Be grateful. This is a gift, right? And so you want to both respect what's different about day to day, but also think about tomorrow. And part of what we're doing that's different from traditional kind of baselining and statistical analysis is we're taking a predictive approach, saying, based on what you have been doing and what we know, here's what we expect that you will do. If you deviate from what we expect, then we start to get more interested. And we do things like really cool stuff like peer group anomaly detection, which sounds kind of a mouthful. But the idea is, imagine that you have 10 different accountants, right? And they all do the same general kind of thing, right? And they all have the same general kind of device and the same general kind of access privileges. Well, if one of them starts to behave really differently, right? Maybe they never come to work. Maybe they work 24 hours a day. If everybody's working 24 hours a day, it's tax time. right? If only that one guy is working 24 hours a day, you might want to pay more attention to him. So the peer group comparison gives us a way to both increase the sensitivity and suppress sensitivity and give you a better understanding based on overall behavior. That's the kind of machine learning model that is far more sophisticated than you would do with any sort of traditional rule, right? And it's not about a statistical baseline for an individual or set of peers. It's more subtle and rich than that.
What do you think with the landscape? There's a lot of venture capital getting poured into the cybersecurity space, specifically around network threat analysis.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the Dark Traces of the world. You've got the the Last Lines of the world, the Vectras. How does a CISO evaluate all these solutions? What are the questions a CISO needs to be asking when they come across a solution like Extrahop? What are those pre-sales questions that mean the most? Because I've come to the conclusion that what types of machine learning algorithms are you using? How many features you look for? That those really aren't as important as other questions. What are the questions?
So I think that's great. We put together a data sheet to help drive that kind of proof of concept conversation, because we felt like there was so much hype and smoke and mirror kind of behavior going on. And, for me, I'm a very pragmatic person, right? Having been in cyber for a while, in enterprise stuff for a while, you've just seen so many things come and go, right? We've seen that movie before repeatedly. So some of the things that we recommend people think about are, for starters, definitely scale, right? Look at what you really do and where you really do it, and make sure that the capacity is there, because it's really hard to retrofit scale. And the thing that's important is it's not just about throwing more boxes at a problem. That's one idea of scale. But the architecture for scale is hard, right? You've seen products before that have died in the process of being re-architected. So you don't want to commit yourself to a vendor whose approach is not going to live on, right? So I think the capacity, the throughput, and the speed of the design is really important. And we take it for granted, but I think it's something you do have to ask. In terms of the approaches that we're taking, one thing we talked a little bit about was how much information are you collecting and then doing the analysis on, right? Are you seeing layers 2 to 4, right? Flow data. That's fine, but you don't have visibility into the applications. You're not going to see what the users are doing. You're going to know that two things were talking, but not much about what they said, right? At layer 7, are they looking at headers? Headers are lovely things. It's frosting. Don't you want to taste the cake, right? So what's in the content and what does that mean for you, right? So how rich is the information that they're pulling off the network? How accessible is it to you, right? Are they letting you search in a really easy and intuitive way? Or are they giving you the detections that they believe are important and have a nice day, right? For us, we're pulling more than 4,000 different pieces of metadata off the wire. That gives you a lot to search with, right? And what we find is that you can use it in a very versatile way, right? It can be something you use proactively, whether that's, I got a clue that something might be wrong, let me go hunt. It could be proactively in the sense of hygiene and vulnerability management and attack surface. How do we see that things might go wrong, see that there are points of weakness that I want to remove, right? Expired certs, weak ciphers, just applications that you thought shouldn't be running, protocols that you thought you'd killed off long ago, right? Or maybe it's something like, I know I can't have Telnet running, but I need it running for this part of this problem, right? But it should never run anywhere else. But you can set up that kind of visibility and monitoring based on the wealth of data that's available. So I think that if you look at the range of problem that you can solve and the capacity to solve the problem, both at a functional level, but also at a results level, that can be really helpful. And the final thing I'd say is, as we look at the cybersecurity challenge, right, there aren't enough people and the world is changing so fast. How do you keep up, right? And you talked about event fatigue. We talk about alert fatigue, audit fatigue. Everybody's tired. If we can make the job easier for each analyst, that they don't have to guess, they don't have to look it up. The data they need to make an informed decision is there at their fingertips. That is beneficial. So look at what's available from an investigation perspective. What workflows are automated? What tools are made easy to use? And how easy is it for a normal human to look at, right? How much, do you have to have spent 10 years in the Army to understand this stuff? Or is it something that someone with a high school education and a will to learn can embrace and do something useful with? And that's both about bringing in new talent and also about cross-skilling the talent you have. Because you may have parts of your organization that are less strategic now as you move to the cloud, as you move to DevOps, as you change your approach to business, but they understand your business. They understand what's important, and they are valuable people. If you can bring them over into the security domain, if you can skill them up with what matters, you match their knowledge about your business with the need to know about security, and that's a powerful combination.
Awesome. Well, final question in 2 minutes. What does Extrahop look like next year?
So this has been an exciting year for me. And I think we are really on a wild ride in terms of 2019 and into 2020. The network traffic analysis category is really, there are kind of two functions going on. One is detection and response from a threat perspective. One is around forensics and investigation. And those areas are pretty well aligned already, and we're going to see more consolidation around feature and function. Some of the older categories like intrusion detection systems, IDSs, they are going to be, even farther back on the bus, maybe in the little trailer coming along behind the bus in terms of what people care about. I think that you're going to see more carving up of like the SIM space. We're already seeing a lot of competition between SIM and other types of value-added analytics, yeah. Right? Yeah, you have UEBA players coming down and saying, I'm good enough SIM, right? Yeah. The SIM guys are saying, just add UEBA, just add SOAR. And then I think the whole cloud disruption thing is really powerful. So for us with Extrahop, we're trying to help people rise above all that change, yeah. Right? And encompass that reality, because as security people, you don't get to choose and say, I'm just not going to pay attention to that stuff because I don't know how. Yeah. You have to get the visibility. You have to be able to detect and respond. And so being able to encompass that range of complexity and continue to do it in real time with confidence is something that we are going to continue to focus on. And I think it's going to become even more important with the competition that we're seeing in this space.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about, Barbara. Thank you so much for having me here, for being on the show, and just being a role model for other women, and that they can rise to leadership and they can provide value and be impactful in this industry.
Well, thank you for giving me a chance to have a voice. This is great.
Well, that does it for another episode of IT Radio. Join us again next week where we talk with Haim Massal, Director of Global Information Security at ActiveCampaign, as he describes what it's like to walk in the shoes of the head of cybersecurity for a large marketing automation and sales CRM platform. As always, take care of yourselves and each other.